Hello and welcome to the next episode in our YouTube series, which is about careers. I'm Imogen and today I'll be talking to Sonja, who is Head of Grants and Trusts. So hello, Sonja.
Hello.
So before we go into a little bit about your job, do you want to just give us a little bit of detail about your background and how you came to English Heritage and how you got your job now?
Yeah, of course. So I have a basic sort of standard route into English Heritage in that I did do a history degree. So I went to University of Warwick, did my undergraduate there, and then enjoyed studying so much that I decided to do a master's in history. I went to UCL to do that. Whilst I was studying, or before I studied, whilst I was studying, after I studied, I had a range of different jobs mostly in theatres actually, so in administration, marketing, and that was partly because I love the theatre and I'd worked in a theatre since I was 16 and it was just really fun thing to do. So the first job that I actually got that was a full-time job was in a theatre and it was in marketing, and then a job came up in fundraising and they sort of suggested that I should have a look at it, and I knew nothing about fundraising. I didn't really understand what it was completely, but I took a look at it and I thought it sounded really interesting and I applied for it and got it, and that's how I learned about fundraising. And then I saw a job come up at English Heritage about a year later, which was grants fundraising officer, which I applied for because I had applied for a job at English Heritage a few years before that and not been successful. So when this job came up and I actually had some of the relevant experience, I got really excited and applied for it and got it.
So what actually is involved in fundraising? I've got a vague idea. Raise funds, but
it's a good question to ask actually. So fundraising is raising money for charities or organisations. That bit's pretty self-explanatory, but there are lots of different facets to it. So my area is grants and trusts. You've also got private philanthropy, which is a really fancy way of saying raising money from individuals. You've got corporates, which is businesses, and then you've got sorts of community fundraising, which can sit with private philanthropy, but it tends to be more about being out and about doing things, like coffee mornings, standing with a bucket, that sort of thing. But grants and trusts in its broadest sense is raising money from grant givers, so organisations like the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who fund this programme, the Arts Council England, all that sort of thing. And then the trust side of it is private trusts. So these are set up family trusts or foundations where they invest money years ago and it accrues interest, and then they have capital which they can give out to organisations. So the way in which charities, universities, health organisations can seek this money is by writing applications, but it's not as boring as that.
So it's not all just sitting behind a desk then?
No, not at all. It's no good just everything being faceless, sending in applications and not engaging with people. You really have to warm them up. Cultivate them is the word we use, but chat them up a little bit. But the brilliant thing about working for English Heritage in grants is that you can actually just say, well, I've written you an application about Kenilworth Castle, for example, but what I'd really like to do is to take you to Kenilworth Castle, because I'm as good as my writing can be, as good as the pictures we can send, they're never going to be as good as getting you out on site and showing you it firsthand. And that's probably why I'm still here, because it is really exciting to take people there, and we get to go as well, so that's great. This week I've been all over the country already, and it is really great, and to see things as well, so to see the sites, but also to see some of the performances that I've seen as part of the Shout Out Loud programme, to see art installations, to see interpretation, to see how things change. One of the projects that we're actually launching next week is Marble Hill Revived in southwest London, again funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the National Lottery Community Fund and loads of other funders actually. And I've been involved in that project since 2015. So the difference now, the work that we've done to the house and landscape, the cafe, the amount of people walking around the park, engaging in activities, it is really wonderful actually, and it can make you a bit emotional at times to see the change that's come about because of the work that we've done and the funds that we've raised.
Sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah.
You were part of the original team for building the project of Shout Out Loud and putting the bidding forward, what does that actually entail? Like, how do you get a project to that point? How long is the process?
This was a particular fund that was actually released by the National Lottery Heritage Fund specifically for heritage organisations to engage with young people. And when a colleague of mine and I saw this call out for funding, we just said, well, we have to be part of that. We can't let that go by, and we need to be doing that. So with sort of big applications like this, it's a long time. So we would put in an expression of interest, which is quite a short form that just gives a rough idea of what we want to do, why we want to do it, how much it will cost. And then from that, we were then invited to submit a first round application. So I think the period for that was about 6 months. So then we developed a first round application for a smaller amount of money, and then we were awarded that. And then we had I think it was about 12 to 18 months to develop our second round application. So you get a small amount of seed funding, we call it, to work on the bigger application. And the purpose of that is that a lot of organisations will have huge aspirations to do massive projects, but you need to do a bit of feasibility. You need to sort of work out how much it's going to cost, if it's actually going to work, find out the right groups to work with, and they just don't have that seed funding that you need to do it. So that's why you have the 2 stages. So I think we started talking about this with a little seed of an idea in September 2016, and it was a good 2 years later that we actually got the full funding, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So it does take a long time, but it's worth it because it means that the project is developed with the community groups, with the end users. It's not just me sitting in an office in London thinking, oh, that'll be all right. It's really a collaborative process to get there. But it also makes sense, this was just under £1 million we were awarded. So of course you need to put in loads of work. You need to make sure it's really robust, rigorous and thorough, and that takes time.
I mean, with this particular project, obviously it was aimed at youth groups and youth people. Did you talk to young people during the bidding process?
We did, yeah. No, we definitely did. And I think if we hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have been successful. So at different stages, we had different levels of consultation with young people, depending upon how much information we needed to provide. So at the very initial stage, it was quite top line. And then as the application developed and we were moving through the stages, we did more and more consultation. So we did a mixture of online and online being surveys, because maybe Zoom existed, but not many people used it if they did. So a lot of surveys, but also some focus groups where we actually brought young people from various different places together to make sure that, as I say, we were reflecting what young people wanted and not just what some people in an office at English Heritage wanted. It's really exciting for me to work on projects that save our heritage. We're safeguarding it to make sure that the next generation and the generation after that can enjoy it in the way that we have. But if there's no one to enjoy it, and if we don't engage people to make sure that we're doing the things that they want to do, telling the stories they want to hear, then it's sort of pointless, really. So we'll always try and engage people.
Yeah, when I've thought about heritage and projects within heritage, I've never really realised how important people like yourself are. Obviously you need someone to sort out all the money side and the grants and everything, but it's just not something that first springs to mind when thinking of a career in heritage.
I think it's a bit unusual.
What would your advice be for someone who perhaps wanted to explore going into grants and trusts a bit more?
I think I would encourage someone to sort of find out a bit more about fundraising. Generally speaking, the bigger the charity, the more specialist the role is. The smaller the charity, you have to do a little bit of everything. So in my previous fundraising role, I had to do a bit of trusts and foundations. I had to do a bit of events. I had to do a bit of individual giving, because it was such a small organisation, and then think about which might be the most interesting for you. I would say that if you're a grants specialist, you do need to not only be good at writing, but enjoy writing, because it is a big part of it. I think the other thing is actually to just really care about the organisations that you're thinking about applying to work for. So with any, and I suppose everyone will say this, but if you're raising money for something, you have to be able to sell it. You have to be able to put that story across as to why the business, why the grant giver, why the individual, why the person on the street should give you money. And if you can't do that in a meaningful and genuine and sincere way, then people will notice. There are a few like graduate training programs as well for fundraising. CASE is the main one. I didn't do it personally, but I know that people have done it. And the other thing, I suppose, is to just reach out to people on LinkedIn. Quite a lot of people get in touch with me on LinkedIn to find out a little bit more about what I do and the types of careers that are available. But I would really stress that you don't need any formal qualifications to be a fundraiser. You just need a passion and to care about the organisation and to be enthusiastic and to be quite agile, because it's definitely not a 9 to 5 desk job. It doesn't need to be a 9 to 9 job. It can be a 9 to 5 job, but it will be different every day in terms of the things that you're doing.
I'm assuming over the years that you've worked as someone in Grants and Trust, you've been involved in lots of different projects. Would you say that you have a particular favourite one, or one that stands out more than others?
Actually, Shout Out Loud is one of my favourite projects. And I think that is because I've actually seen English heritage change through the delivery of Shout Out Loud. And that's partly because I've been here for so long, but also because I actually do see the way in which the young producers are making a difference to the way we do things. They're questioning things, they're asking the difficult questions, but forcing us to rethink how we work. And then I've been able to come and see some amazing things, so like the exhibition at Rest Park, the England's New Lenses, the Our House performance at Elton Palace, and various other things. And it's just to actually see things in person, but also to actually see the difference made from your work is quite emotional, actually, sometimes when you think about it. And when you hear about people having placements and then going on to get amazing jobs, when you hear about people just having a really good time and enjoying it, when you hear about some of the grants that we've given out as part of Shout Out Loud, the Reverberate programme, and see some of the feedback, it's just exciting. And I think I get excited about it because I'm from a theatre background, so the arts and the creative side of it is really fun as well.
So thank you, Sonja, for taking part in this. It's been really, really interesting to hear you talk about your job, and it's just amazing to talk to someone with such passion about what they do. And I don't know about the people watching, but it's made me inspired to go and look up a Grants and Trusts career. Thank you to everyone who has watched this, and there will be more episodes of our series coming out soon.